Clear your desk. HR will process your exit by noon.
She didn't flinch as she said it, just watched me like a formality was being checked off. Then came the final jab. "You're just not cut out for this job, Evelyn." Madeline Keene said it with the kind of confidence that only came from knowing she'd already won. She leaned back in her leather chair, like a queen surveying her conquered territory. Her voice was smooth, too smooth, and it carried just enough condescension to sound professional. Across from her, I sat quietly folding my hands in my lap, careful not to let her see the tremor in my fingers. But inside, something else stirred an old familiar heat, like an ember. I'd spent years keeping buried. I should have felt devastated, maybe even ashamed, but instead I felt awake. The West Ridge Hotel. Project needs someone with stronger leadership skills. She continued like this was some HR counseling session, someone who can inspire the board, speak their language, make bold moves. "You mean someone who knows how to present other people's work as their own?" I said it softly, almost conversationally. Not an accusation. Not yet. Madeline's perfectly shaped eyebrows lifted. She gave a breathy little laugh. "Evelyn, I presented it because that's what a director does. I lead, you support. That's always been the dynamic, hasn't it?" My lips pressed together. My redesign for West Ridge had saved the firm nearly $300,000 in projected costs while improving energy efficiency and water retention. But in the company press release, the byline read, "Lead designer Madeline Keene." I wasn't even mentioned. "Look," she said, sighing, as though I were a child refusing to see reason. "This just isn't working anymore. You're stuck in the old way. The firm's moving forward, and I need a team that understands their place in the hierarchy." I took a slow breath and glanced toward the glass walls behind her. Outside colleagues moved like shadows, glancing in with curiosity. How many of them had already heard whispers, I understand, I said at last. Madeline's eyes flickered. "You do?" I gave her a small, almost sympathetic smile. "I'll leave on Friday, but Monday will be interesting." Her smug expression faltered, only for a split second. Always with the cryptic comments she muttered, "This is exactly what I'm talking about, passive-aggressive, resistant to change. Evelyn, we need more dynamic energy. You should take some time to reflect on that." I stood without another word and turned toward the hallway. My heels clicked on the tile floor, steady, measured, not rushed. I passed the company's project wall, a long glass gallery lined with framed photos of our greatest architectural triumphs. I paused. There it was, the West Ridge Hotel, its white curving facade gleaming under sunset light. My design. My innovation, but underneath it, in gold letters, lead architect Madeline Keene. Right beside it were Lakeview Towers, Pinehurst, Community Center, and Southside, Marina Pavilion, all projects I had poured myself into. All bore her name. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. A message from Miles Carrington, one of the firm's few architects I still trusted. How'd it go?" I typed back. "Karen looks smug. She's pushing me out." His reply was immediate. "That's insane. Your coastal restoration project just won an award. I'm still telling people it was yours." I stared at the words, "just won an award." But in the press release, it was Madeline who accepted the trophy. Madeline who gave the speech. Madeline who said, "Design is about vision, not just execution." I reached into my desk drawer, unlocked the second compartment, and pulled out a small black external hard drive. It looked so ordinary, but inside were 6 months' worth of backups, original CAD files, early concept sketches, internal email threads, even voice notes, a digital trail. My trail I had started saving everything months ago. At first it was for peace of mind, then it became insurance, and now it felt like ammo. My desk phone rang. I picked up, still holding the drive in my hand. "Evelyn." "It's Laurie at the front," said the receptionist. Her voice had a slight tension, like she wasn't sure if she should be calling. "There's someone in the lobby asking for you from Archer and Hayes. He says, It's about the consultation you did for their waterfront proposal. My blood ran cold. I've never done any consultation for Archer and Hayes, I said slowly. Oh well, he said it was urgent. Should I send him up? No, I replied. Tell him I'll come down. I stood there for a moment, heart pounding. Archer and Hayes was our biggest competitor in the region. If anyone at Reynolds thought I'd been working with them behind the scenes, I shoved the drive into my bag and made my way to the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the mirror, polished walls. I looked tired, older than I remembered, but I also saw something else, a quiet steel behind the eyes. The version of me that had once taken on New York projects while raising a baby girl alone. The version that had rebuilt her life from scratch. The version Madeline never bothered to know. The lobby was cool and bright with sunlight pouring through the tall windows. A man in a dark grey suit stood near the waiting area, scrolling through his phone. He looked up as I approached. Ms. Hartman, he asked, extending his hand. Graham Sinclair, Archer, and Hayes. I shook his hand cautiously. You said you had a question about a consultation. Yes, he said, furrowing his brow. You're listed as the design consultant for our Portland waterfront revitalization proposal. Madeline Keene sent over the preliminary renderings last month. She said you'd helped shape the concept. I blinked Portland. That was a side project I'd sketched at home on my iPad. After hours, never presented, never submitted, just an exercise. What if I hadn't even told anyone about it? May I see those renderings? I asked, voice tight. Graham opened his tablet and tapped a few times. And then there they were. My shapes, my curves. My notes turned into glossy digital presentations. Modified just enough to seem collaborative, but unmistakably mine. These were presented as a joint effort between your firm and ours. Graham explained. We were impressed by the integration of green spaces and the modular flood-resilient platforms. We've already shown it to the Portland Commission. My vision blurred. She stole it, I whispered. Pardon? I looked him in the eyes. That design wasn't shared with your firm. I never gave permission, and Madeline Keene. She had no right. Graham frowned. This is troubling. You have no idea, I thought. Back upstairs, I passed by Madeline's office. Her door was closed, her blinds drawn, but I could imagine her inside preparing the next step in her grand performance. My email pinged. All staff meeting today. 3:00 p.m. Subject, Strategic Partnership Announcement. I didn't need a calendar reminder to know what was coming. She was going to stand before the company, present my work, and ride it straight into a promotion, but I wasn't going to let her. I sat down at my desk, reached for the hard drive again, and plugged it into my laptop. Then, without hesitation, I started uploading everything to a private secure cloud folder. Not just Portland. Everything. Every stolen concept. Every email thread. Every timestamp. When the time came, I would be ready, and on Monday, Madeline Keene would learn exactly what I was cut out for. The rain started just as I stepped out of the building. Seattle rain has a certain honesty to it. It doesn't pretend to be poetic. It just falls steadily without apology, soaking everything in its path. I pulled my coat tighter around me and crossed the street to the cafe on the corner. Graham Sinclair was already inside, seated near the window with a coffee in front of him and a look of polite confusion on his face. He stood when he saw me, gesturing to the empty seat across from him. I appreciate you meeting on short notice, he said as I sat down. I didn't think I had a choice, I replied, brushing damp hair from my face. You said something about my design being presented to the Portland Commission. Graham nodded, pushing his tablet toward me. These are the final visuals we submitted. According to Madeline Keene, the conceptual framework was yours, developed in a brainstorming session you two had last quarter. I stared at the screen. There it was, my concept, elevated walkways over tidal marshes, floating gardens that rose and fell with the water, flexible use spaces that could convert from recreation to emergency staging areas. The original idea had come to me late one night while watching a documentary about climate adaptation in the Netherlands. I sketched the first draft on a napkin, and yet here it was presented in high resolution with branding from both Reynolds and Archer and Hayes, without a single mention of my name. There was no brainstorming session, I said. She must have pulled the files from my laptop while I was out of the office. Graham's brow furrowed. You're saying this design is entirely your intellectual property? Yes, I said firmly. And I have the drafts, the timestamps, the email history to prove it. He leaned back slightly. That complicates things. The commission was so impressed they asked for a public showcase next month, if the authorship is in dispute. It's not in dispute, I interrupted. It's been stolen. He was silent for a long moment. Can I be honest with you? He said finally. Please do. When Madeline sent these to us, something felt off. The level of detail, the integration of environmental engineering with spatial dynamics. It didn't match her previous work. We even joked internally that she must have hired a ghost designer. That was the moment I realized people were already suspicious. And if I played this right, I wouldn't have to scream to be heard. I'd only have to speak clearly, calmly with evidence. I'll send you my originals, I said, but I'm not sharing anything officially until I've spoken with my firm. Graham nodded, visibly uncomfortable. Understood. We parted without shaking hands. Back home that evening, I dug into the digital trenches. My apartment was modest but clean. A bookshelf lined with architecture books stood by the window, each one dog-eared and annotated. The dining table had become my workspace blueprints, notepads, a second monitor. I powered up my laptop and connected the external hard drive. First, I located the original iPad sketches, dated, signed, timestamped. Then came the CAD files created under my login credentials and autosaved to the company cloud. I exported every iteration into PDFs, backing them up to a secure cloud account. Next, I opened my email archives. That's when I noticed something strange. In my sent folder was an email from 2 weeks ago addressed to a contact at Archer & Hayes. It contained 2 attachments, the Portland site plan and a bullet point pitch document. The body of the email read, per our discussion, let me know what you think. I hadn't written it. I hadn't even been in town. I was in Vancouver visiting my daughter for the weekend. My heart pounded. She'd used my laptop. I'd left it in the office, charging station that Friday. Naively assuming no one would touch it, I picked up my phone and texted Miles Carrington. Need to talk, urgent. Do you remember? If Madeline was near my desk the weekend I was in Vancouver. He responded quickly. Yes, she said she was collecting files for a presentation. Why, I just found an email from my account that I didn't send. It went to Archer & Hayes. There was a long pause. Evelyn, she's setting you up. The next morning, I arrived at the office early. The sky was overcast, the building quiet. I walked the familiar halls with the weight of truth pressing on my shoulders. No one knew yet. But they would. At my desk, I found an envelope. No name, no return address, just my initials, printed in block letters. Inside were color printouts of the Portland renderings with a sticky note attached. You should see this. You won't believe what she's doing next. A friend. I turned the pages and nearly dropped them. It was a draft of the internal proposal to promote Madeline to creative director. The justification. Her visionary leadership on Portland, her ability to foster external partnerships. The language was glowing and built entirely on my stolen work. A dull ringing began in my ears. I scrolled through the office calendar. A meeting had just been scheduled for Friday afternoon. Strategic leadership announcement. All staff attendance required. I closed my eyes. This wasn't just theft anymore. This was a hostile erasure, a calculated move to discredit me, steal my legacy and silence me before I could fight back. But she had underestimated me again. That evening, Miles came over after work. He brought Thai food and that worried look he always wore when something felt off. She's planting a narrative, he said. After you left yesterday, she told a few people you'd been sharing files outside the firm, that she had to act quickly to contain it. She's painting me as a security threat. I said more to myself than to him. Miles nodded. Even people who respect you are starting to look confused, like they don't know what to believe. I opened my laptop and showed him the email chain, the metadata, the voice notes I'd recorded during the early stages of the Portland design. "This is my proof," I said. He exhaled. "Then you need to use it." I shook my head. "Not yet. Not until she steps into the spotlight. I want her so sure of her victory that she doesn't see it coming." Miles leaned back in his chair, watching me with something like admiration. "I've known you 8 years," he said, "and I've never seen you like this." "I've never had to be like this," I replied. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I sat by the window sipping tea, watching the rain against the glass. I thought about all the times I'd been told I was too quiet, too soft-spoken, too supportive to lead. I thought about the countless hours I'd worked late while others went home. The birthday parties I'd missed, the missed calls from my daughter, the awards I never collected, the meetings where I was talked over, the credit that was taken, and then I thought about Friday, about the room full of people, about the screen, showing my work under someone else's name. I wasn't going to let it happen again. I arrived early on Friday, earlier than usual. The sky was still a smoky grey and the building smelled faintly of fresh paper and espresso, the scent of another performance about to unfold. The firm had called an all-hands meeting for 3:30 p.m. That alone was unusual. We hadn't had one in months, not since Charles Dunley began semi-retirement and Madeline started unofficially running the place. When Reynolds Architecture sent out a strategic leadership announcement, it only meant one thing. A promotion was being staged. I sat at my desk and watched the office shift. Emails slowed, conversations grew hushed, people clustered by the printer or the kitchen speculating in low tones. And then around 10 o'clock, an envelope was delivered to my desk. Heavy stock. No return address. Inside a glossy folder marked Confidential. Executive Summary. Portland Partnership. Initiative. My stomach tightened. I flipped it open. There laid out in stunning detail were the financials, projected timelines, engineering team structures, and brand partnership plans for the Portland project. But what froze me wasn't the content. It was the cover page. Lead visionary Madeline Keene, in collaboration with Archer and Hayes. Design group, no mention of me, not even buried in acknowledgements. She had erased me from my own concept. There was a yellow post-it attached to the final page. "Just so you know how far she's taking it. Don't let her win. A friend." I looked up, scanning the room. Miles wasn't in yet. Laurie, at reception, met my gaze for a beat too long, then looked away. She knew, maybe not everything, but enough. I tucked the file into my bag and locked my desk drawer. Madeline had every card lined up: the design, the board, the narrative. All that remained was the curtain rising. At 2:50 p.m., the entire office gathered in the central conference room. It was the kind of space designed to impress clients. Clean lines, brushed metal accents, wall-mounted screens, playing soft ambient loops of past projects. I took a seat near the back. Not out of shyness, I wanted to watch her perform. Madeline walked in at exactly 3. Flanked by Charles Dunley and a visiting executive I recognized from Archer and Hayes Graham Sinclair. She was dressed in navy blue, her favorite promotion color. Her heels clicked confidently across the floor as she took position at the front. She didn't look at me. Charles cleared his throat. "Thank you all for joining us. Today marks a pivotal moment for Reynolds Architecture. As many of you know, we've been exploring partnerships that align with our values of sustainable innovation and urban renewal. I'm proud to announce a strategic collaboration with Archer and Hayes for the Portland Waterfront Revitalization Project. Applause. I didn't clap. On the screen behind them, the Portland project visuals appeared, renderings that I knew better than I knew the lines on my own palms. Madeline stepped forward. "Thank you, Charles. This project is a milestone, not just for the firm, but for me personally. It represents the culmination of months of cross-sector planning and visionary design." She clicked through the slides like a TED Talk pro, speaking about modular floodplains, green corridors, and civic accessibility, all concepts she could barely spell. 6 months ago, I watched colleagues nod, impressed. Due to the project's scale, Charles continued, and Madeline's exceptional leadership in bringing this vision to life, we're pleased to name her as creative director. Effective immediately, there it was, the final piece. Applause rose again, this time louder, more congratulatory. A few staff members even stood. I didn't. Madeline smiled graciously and shook Charles's hand. Then for just a moment she looked in my direction. Our eyes met, and I saw it, the flicker. She knew I knew. After the meeting, I followed Charles out into the corridor. "Charles," I said calmly, "could I speak with you?" "It's about the Portland project." He blinked, surprised. "Now I'm just heading into—" "It won't take long," I said. We turned toward his office, but before we got there, Madeline appeared. "Too fast, too convenient, Charles," she said. "Can we touch base about next week's transition schedule? And you have that board call at 3:30, remember?" He hesitated. "Caught. This really can't wait," I said, looking directly at him. Madeline gave a sweet professional smile. "Actually, Charles, I've been meaning to discuss some concerns about Evelyn's recent behavior. I didn't want to bring it up during the announcement, but now seems appropriate." He turned to her, frowning. "Concerns?" "Yes, some irregularities with document access, confusion over authorship. There have been whispers about external file sharing. It was so smooth, so well rehearsed. I nearly laughed. "You're suggesting I leaked the Portland project?" I said. "I'm suggesting we clarify who contributed what," she replied. Charles looked uncomfortable. "Let's all sit down." Inside the glass-walled office, the light felt harsher. For the next 20 minutes, I listened as Madeline spun her version that I had submitted exploratory sketches, which she then refined and developed into the current vision. That I had grown resentful, that I accessed confidential files and may have misunderstood the direction of the project. Then she produced a folder. Inside were printed emails, ones allegedly from me sending drafts to outside firms. They looked real. They had my address. My tone, "They're forged," I said. "We can investigate further," Charles offered, clearly rattled. "But with everything going on and the restructuring around Madeline's promotion, it might be best to accelerate your departure." I stared at him. "You're terminating me today," I said, based on unproven accusations. "Evelyn," he said gently, "this isn't personal. You'll receive 2 months' severance. It's a standard agreement. We'll keep things respectful." I looked at Madeline. She smiled with professional sympathy. I didn't speak. I just picked up the folder, stood and walked out. Back at my desk, HR was already there. They watched as I packed my things, a plant from my daughter, 3 framed certificates, and a ceramic paperweight from my first project win. I added the hard drive last. The separation agreement sat at the bottom of the box like a verdict. "I'm sorry it ended this way," Laurie whispered at reception. "Thank you," I said, "but it's not the end." Outside the city moved on. Traffic surged. The clouds broke open just slightly, letting a shard of sunlight strike the pavement. In the back of my cab, I finally let the reality settle in. I was out-labeled a problem, a thief, a liability. But I wasn't broken, not even close, because the truth was on my side. And Monday, I wouldn't be silent. I didn't sleep Friday night, not because I was sad or scared. Those feelings had long passed. What kept me awake was something else, sharper, colder. Clarity. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, everything was quiet inside me. The betrayal wasn't surprising anymore. Madeline Keene had shown me exactly who she was. The company had shown me exactly where I stood. And now I had nothing left to lose except the truth. And that truth I had in abundance. Saturday morning. Seattle was moody and grey. The rain had paused, leaving everything slick and glistening. I made a cup of strong coffee, pulled my hair into a knot, and opened my laptop. On the table next to it sat my external hard drive, like a coiled trap waiting to spring. I began sorting sketches, blueprints, email threads, audio notes, time-stamped progress files. I created folders and labeled them carefully. Coastal Restoration, Lakeview Pavilion, Westridge Hotel, and finally Portland Waterfront. Each one told a story. My story. A digital footprint of a woman who had been quietly building a legacy, even while someone else took the credit. Mid-morning. A knock came at my door. It was Miles Carrington, holding a brown bag of bagels and a worried look. "I figured you hadn't eaten," he said. "You figured right." He stepped inside and glanced at the war zone that was my kitchen table. His eyes fell on the folders. "You're building a case." "I'm building the truth," I said. He sat across from me and handed me a sesame bagel. "I spoke to Jenna in IT," he said. "Off the record." My heart skipped. "She confirmed there were unauthorized logins under your credentials," he continued. "During your weekend in Vancouver, downloads from your project folder, internal file transfers. She's scared to say more, but she's willing to talk anonymously if it comes to that." "Did she say who accessed the files?" Miles hesitated. "She didn't need to. All access points trace back to Madeline's desktop." I nodded, unsurprised. "She's good," I said. "She planted fake emails, rewrote the authorship narrative, positioned herself as the victim, while I was cast as the threat." Miles studied me for a moment. "So, what's the plan?" I took a sip of coffee. "I don't release anything yet. Not to the firm, not to the press, not even to Archer and Hayes. Not until Madeline steps fully into the light. I want her to believe she's untouchable. And then I shine a light so bright the shadows can't hide her anymore." Later that afternoon, I received an unexpected email from Graham Sinclair. Subject: quick call. "Body Evelyn, I'd like to follow up on our conversation. Some internal questions have come up regarding design attribution. Nothing formal, just hoping to clarify a few things." He didn't say it, but I could read between the lines. Portland officials had questions, maybe the commission, maybe someone from the sustainability board. Either way, cracks were forming, I typed back. "Of course, let's schedule something for Monday. I wasn't going to rush." That evening, I called my daughter. "Hey, sweetheart," I said when she picked up. "Mom, you okay? You never call on weekends." "I'm okay now," I said. "I just wanted to hear your voice." She paused. "Did something happen at work?" I smiled sadly. "You could say that." We talked for an hour about nothing and everything, about her new apartment in San Francisco, her promotion, her dog, her frustrations with corporate politics. And finally, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Are you still going to retire next year?" I looked out the window at the darkened skyline. "I thought I was," I said softly, "but something happened. Something I need to finish first." There was a beat of silence. "Then finish it," she said, "but make sure they know your name when it's over." Sunday was for finishing touches. I created a master folder titled Design Authorship, Evelyn Hartman. Inside were 6 years of proof. I included PDF exports of original sketches with embedded metadata, AutoCAD source files with version histories, internal emails where Madeline asked for my input or praised my ideas, screenshots of internal project dashboards listing me as project lead before Madeline changed it, voice memos I'd recorded while brainstorming solutions for Westridge and Portland, 2 client testimonials that explicitly referenced me as their lead contact. But the most important piece was buried deep in a 2019 email chain. Madeline had written, "Evelyn, I need your magic touch on this. That coastal restoration concept of yours saved our reputation after the Marshfield debacle. Teach me how you think," her words, her voice, her admission. I exported the thread into a standalone file, renamed it Madeline/K Admits, EH, Original, Coastal, PDF. I sat back and stared at the screen. It was enough. I didn't need revenge. I needed record. Sunday evening, another email arrived from anonymous, subject Portland, internal comms leak attachment PPT. Next steps with City Planning Board note. "You should see this, they're getting bolder." I opened it carefully. It was a presentation scheduled to go out Monday morning, written by Madeline. In it, she outlined her vision for Portland, phrases like my early concepts. I developed a new flood resilience framework, and my relationship with city planners appeared repeatedly. But what chilled me most was the final line. "All previous collaborators have exited the project. It was a lie, a declaration that I had never existed in the process, that I had been a ghost that wouldn't stand. Sunday night, I reviewed everything. One last time, I organized the files onto a backup drive. I created a secure